on the air. I want to welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting. Our chair and our vice chair are both out of town, and so the 4 commissioners that are here have create a quorum, and I would suggest that the 4 commissioners that are here elect someone to be the chair for the evening. So does anyone want to nominate another commissioner for that role?
I'll nominate our most recent chair, Commissioner Emer.
Is there a second?
Seconded. Okay.
Any other nominations? Nope. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And no opposed. So I'll be quiet and Greg can take over. Take your name tag with you, Greg.
Yeah, I'll get organized here. And Scott, do you want to move so that you can see this screen? It's easier for you?
I'll be all right. Set up.
Do you remember how to do this, Greg?
I hope so. All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the table in the hall. If you have not picked up an agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. If you wish to be included in the mailing list for a decision, please add your name and contact information to the sign-up list located on the table in the hallway. If you wish to testify, please also fill out a yellow comment card. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from April 10th, April 24th, and May 8th, all of 2018. Let's start off with the April 10th. Does anybody have any comments or corrections to make?
No.
No.
I would like to entertain a motion to accept the minutes from April 10th, 2018 as written.
Motion to approve meeting minutes from April 10th, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that one passes. Next, on to April 24th. Does anybody have any corrections for the April 24th, 2018 meeting?
No.
No.
All right. I will make a motion to, or I would accept a motion to approve the minutes for the April 24th, 2018 as written.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from April 24th, 2018.
Seconded.
So moved by Commissioner Grau, seconded by Commissioner Jones. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, that one carries. May 8th, 2018. Does anybody have any corrections to make?
No.
No.
No? Okay. I will entertain a motion to accept the May 8th, 2018 minutes as written.
I move that we accept approve the May 8th, 2018 Planning Commission minutes as written.
Second.
So moved by Commissioner Edge and seconded by Commissioner Grau. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Informational items. Are there any informational items from staff?
You all missed out on a really lengthy appeal hearing at the council last week. Some of the neighbors from the fields, the school district's field project out on Lake Road had appealed that. And I think it ended at maybe 11:20 thereabouts that night, but council gave us direction to revise some conditions and come back. So we expect an approval at the next a week from now, and then no, actually it went out further because the council isn't meeting on the 13th, so it's on the 14th or the 17th. We're going back for hopefully final approval. But conditions, revised conditions related to some greater certainty related to when activities have to end at the site. So rather than leaving it sort of open-ended for summertime play to go later than 9 o'clock, activities need to end at 9. The commission had recommended that lights go off at 9. And the other thing was some additional discussion about the Transportation Demand Management Program and tying back a couple of elements that were required or weren't addressed as part of the parking determination. And those included a literature review and a review of some more detailed review of parking demand. So those are things that are going to be addressed as part of this. And then clarifying that the TDM program will come back to the Planning Commission for a hearing and approval, not just a review.
And that's the 2 TDMs together, right?
Yeah. Well, it's one TDM.
Right, but there was one that for the high school and...
Oh, for the high school? Well, this action won't impact the high school one, but we should probably handle the high school one in the same manner.
Did they do the library too that night?
No, adopted the findings.
Oh, they did adopt the findings. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there was no discussion. So anyway,
okay.
That continues on. And I guess the other thing is at that meeting, they also continued the North Milwaukee Industrial Area approval project or approval of that and final discussion until August. So the July meetings were, the meeting on the 3rd was canceled and the other meeting was booked up. So we're, and we couldn't have handled that as well last Tuesday because of the appeal. Went from 8 o'clock until 11:20. So.
Do you want to mention the comp plan meeting?
I'm sorry?
The comp plan meeting that's on Wednesday?
Oh, we do have a comp plan meeting tomorrow, but I know David's going to mention that, so I...
Okay. All right. Audience participation. This is an opportunity to comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, there will be time for comments after the presentation. There is no one in the audience, so I'm assuming no one wishes to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Work session items. Comprehensive plan update by Mr. Levitan.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. I'm David Levitan, Senior Planner, here to talk about the Block 1 policies within the Comprehensive Plan update. I would like to point out that if you're looking to best the Council's record from last Tuesday, you actually need to account for them starting 30 minutes earlier, so you're going to have to go till 11:51 if you want to compete with that. So with that, we'll go ahead and get going. We're here tonight to do a couple things. We wanted to give you an update on additional feedback that we've received on the Block 1 goals and policies since we last had a work session with you on May 22nd, and then just basically discuss in advance of tomorrow night's Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. At the Public Safety Building. If there are any topics really that you want us to bring up specifically with the CPAC, that basically will be the last opportunity to really establish any refined or new policies that you would like to recommend for them to consider as they draft any last minute changes in advance of the July 17th public hearing where the City Council will be pinning down the Block 1 policies by resolution. So I'm going to breeze through these just because kind of we're all date on these, but basically there are 4 topic areas in Block 1: community engagement, economic development, urban growth management, and history, arts, and culture. History, arts, and culture will be a new chapter. There is a section that includes historic and cultural resources in the existing comprehensive plan, but the arts and culture component is a new section. Just a little bit on the review to date. We've had 4 CPAC meetings to date, with our 5th being tomorrow night. We had a town hall on April 4th, which was attended by about 100 to 120 people. We met with the Planning Commission back on May 22nd. And at that point, we were reviewing kind of the post-CPAC4 meeting goals. We got your feedback on those, made a couple of refinements, but largely kept the policies and the goals and policies unchanged in the version that was then featured in an online survey that ran between May 31st and June 14th. I'm going to get into a little bit more on the survey results on the next slide. And then we had a work session with the City Council last week and basically presented a lot of the same information that we'll be presenting tonight. They didn't have any real substantive changes to the policy language, weren't really asking for any additional policies.
I guess the other thing is that night they had a 300-page packet and 600 pages worth of links. Like the links led to 600 pages of other material. So, you know, we can't criticize them for maybe not spending as much time thinking about the policies at that meeting as we might have originally hoped.
We were also on the work session and somewhat limited on time, so we had about 40 minutes. So yeah, it would have been hard to really get into the specific language at that point. So a little bit more on the online survey. So as I mentioned, it ran for 2 weeks between May 31st and June 14th. There are basically two options for people on the survey. We asked everyone to evaluate on a Likert scale, kind of from strongly disagree to strongly agree on the goals. And then people were able to opt in to basically rank and prioritize the underlying policies within each goal. We generally got between 100 and 120 responses for the goals as far as evaluating those. Generally about 35 to 40% of the people then opted in to actually rank the individual policies underneath each goal. We had translated the survey into Spanish, and we did get one full response. That maybe it definitely wasn't as good of a response as we'd like, and it's something that we're going to continue to try to improve our outreach to the Spanish-speaking community. We got some interesting data as far as about a third of the responses were on mobile phones or tablets, so that shows that people are accessing it kind of outside of a traditional desktop computer. And then there definitely was a little bit of survey fatigue. It was a pretty intense survey. It was also running concurrently with the Climate Action Plan survey, was open basically at the same time. And so there definitely people kind of slowed down, and as they got to the later goals and policies, people started to trail off. But generally it was pretty good response as far as people filling out the whole survey.
You also noted that the survey randomly switched over the...
It did, and so to try to address the survey fatigue, some people would see economic development first, some people would see history, arts, and culture first, just so that we didn't, have a consistent survey fatigue where nobody made it through to the last section. So that was something that we had programmed in. And then it was nice to see we did get some demographic information from the people that filled that out. We got representation, at least 5 responses from all 7 neighborhoods. I think Ardenwald and Hector Campbell were slightly overrepresented. And I think Llewellyn, and I forget the other that was slightly underrepresented, but generally we were pleased that we did get responses from throughout the city.
So can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know how many responses the Climate Action Plan survey got?
I think they got about 90 or 100 responses. They didn't have the opt-in component. I know that they got similar responses, and I haven't checked with Peter Passarelli as far as if those counted partial responses or if those were just people that filled out the whole survey.
I know right before it closed, I'd asked Peter about it, and we had similar numbers.
Okay.
So, moving on to the community engagement section, as far the current version that's included in your packet, we have 4 goals and 16 policies. We brought these to you on May 22nd, pretty much the same version. The major comments that you had on this section were we had a pretty good discussion as far as whether the Planning Commission should serve as that kind of citizen or community involvement advisory committee to evaluate kind of overall community engagement within Milwaukee. Commissioner Edge had brought up examples from Clackamas County, an example from Clackamas County that they have a separate board that deals with that. We did follow up with the city manager's office on that just to discuss and to get some council feedback on that and just how we would like to evaluate community engagement in general and whether that should be really, you know, the broader community engagement on topics outside of land use planning, whether that should be something that the Planning Commission is responsible. And the city manager's office felt that that probably wouldn't be best within the Planning Commission's purview and suggested that we do have the Planning Commission serve in that CIAC role for evaluating kind of land use and transportation planning related topics to meet that the way that it's stated within statewide planning goal 1. And so that's something that was one, I think might have been the only policy that's been kind of strike through and redlined within the packet that you have. That is some language that we added and that we are recommending. So we would like to get your feedback on that. And then just as far as a quick summary of the survey feedback that we got on the community engagement section, across all 4 goals, over 90% felt that the goals were moving in the right direction. Several respondents, we allowed people to provide individual comments, and a lot of the comments were related to NDAs and just how to make them kind of better engage and be more representative of the community to reduce barriers for people to get involved at the neighborhood level. And so that's definitely something that we want to keep in mind as we start to evaluate the NDA program and how we can best maximize that to solicit community input. So we can, you know, kind of stay, as far as this meeting, I don't know if the commissioners have a preference to kind of touch on the topics as we go through the slides, or if you'd like me to go through the presentation and then we can kind of touch on all the different goals and policies at once. So whatever your preference is, we can stop here and talk about community engagement if you have any additional comments, or we can kind of work our way through.
I'd be fine if we continued.
Okay. All right. So economic development, we're at 3 goals and 21 policies. The Planning Commission at your May 22nd work session had a couple of main comments. One was on kind of just what the definition of a sharing economy is, and I kind of stumbled my way through it, so we definitely need to work on that. I think what we're proposing, as opposed to adding additional language within the policy, within the individual policy, is we'll be needing to develop a kind of a list of definitions and acronyms, just because we're going to be throwing these things at people and they probably won't really understand a lot of the more technical terms and the acronyms. So I think what we would propose is that we hold off on refining the policy, but just basically have a definition section that kind of addresses that and provides more clarity on what we mean by that. There were just some kind of minor things that came up a lot in the individual comments in the survey. Sorry, I'll go back to the Planning Commission also mentioned we have a policy in there that calls for increasing our workforce within home-based businesses, and there was some concern that if we're going to be doing that and expanding the type and scope of businesses that exist within residential neighborhoods, that we need to make sure that we address those. Again, I would ask the commission if there is some specific policy language, or if you would like that to be incorporated into the policy, or if that's something that as we start to do code amendments, or as we start to, you know, kind of refine our home occupancy program, would it be better tackled within kind of code language, or would you like to see something specifically within the policy language? So that's something maybe we'll want to come back to when we have our discussion overall here after the presentation. This preliminary survey feedback was good on the goals. Again, over 90% felt that the goals were moving in the right direction. There were some things that kind of popped up a lot within the individual comments, like what do you mean by nimble when you're talking about, remaining nimble to changes in technology and trends. And so we're, I think at this point, proposing that we change that nimble to adaptable, just something that people kind of have a better idea of what we're meaning by that. And then there was some questions, a number of questions too, just about what we meant by economic land supply. And so, we were thinking of whether or not there was a better title for that to really get at what we're meaning. When it comes to Milwaukee's economic land supply, we don't really have any vacant land supply. So should we refine it to really reflect, this is primarily related to infill and redevelopment opportunities, just because we don't have that land supply. We don't have, greenfield supply like out in Hillsborough or Happy Valley. So should that goal kind of more specifically allude to redevelopment opportunities? Urban growth management. Have 6 goals and 20 policies. The Planning Commission on May 22nd has some really good ideas, as far as ways that we can engage the areas within our urban growth management area, specifically, reaching out to nearby unincorporated areas to really showcase the benefits of being part of the Milwaukee community. We don't have a whole lot of carrots and incentives to get people to come in, and so I think it's really showcasing the value of community that exists in Milwaukee that maybe doesn't exist within unincorporated, having very local, representative government, within just a few minutes of their house, as opposed to having to go down to Oregon City, all the types of events that we do. And I think really that first step. And so, I'd like to discuss more if you would like to see that, if that could be worked into an existing policy, or if you would recommend that we have an additional policy that we can potentially kind of wordsmith tonight and then present to the CPAC tomorrow night. And then really, I think it was Commissioner Edge that brought up that it would be very much helpful to have additional incentives to annex, specifically things like higher density than Clackamas County offers. We had used the example of the onion farm there on Lake Road that actually could get more units while in the county. So there really was no incentive for them to come into Milwaukee and annex in prior to their subdivision and their development. And so that is some additional things that, we can discuss with the CPAC tomorrow night, if that's direction that the Planning Commission would like to provide. As far as the survey, just because of how kind of dense and long this section was, we actually only included 2 goals in there, the one related to annexation and urban form. We didn't include kind of the more kind of the language related to Milwaukee planning area and joint planning areas. We wanted to definitely get people's idea on the urban form and the annexation goal and related policies. Annexation of all the goals across all 4 sections was the lowest rated goal. It was still at 85%, either kind of very much generally in the right direction or strongly in the right direction. But there was, this was kind of the most vocal minority within the comments section, especially as far as people thinking that they'd like to stay small, that they don't want to have an aggressive annexation policy to try to grow out to 205 and to the southeast and, really grow within that entire UGMA area. And then the 4th one is history, arts, and culture. So we have 3 goals and 23 policies. Our discussion on May 22nd here at the Planning Commission's work session really focused on, one of the major things was whether it was better to encourage or require preservation. Right now, our historic preservation program is entirely voluntary as far as getting on the register and really participating in that. There was some discussion as far as whether, we should shift that. And so I'd like to see if there's any additional discussion needed around that, or there's, I know that Commissioner Hemer had brought up that he generally suggested that it's better to encourage it to, get people that are really wanting to participate in the program, as opposed to having very strict standards as far as, a certain cutoff date or a certain architecture type. And then the Planning Commission had also suggested that we mention the environmental benefits of historic preservation and adaptive reuse. That's something that we wanted to get feedback from the survey before we work that into potentially a kind of a refined policy, but we would like to get your feedback on that as far as, is that something that you would like us to revise one of the existing policies or to add an additional policy to really kind of introduce that kind of sustainability component to historic preservation. And again, on the survey results, all 3 goals were deemed to be moving in the right direction by at least 90% of the survey respondents. There was a lot of interest in kind of creative spaces, whether it be within manufacturing areas or other areas that are maybe currently underutilized, but some concerns about the feasibility of that, just as far as, definitely with land values going up and with some of these spaces being kind of very chopped up and maybe not being the best spaces especially for artist spaces. There were some concerns about that. And then people generally were very appreciative and receptive to us trying to introduce art into the built environment. And they wanted to make sure that that was kind of local art and very representative of Milwaukee's history, both as kind of documented European history and then going back predating European history as well, making sure that it's representative of all of Milwaukee's history. So as far as our next steps, as I mentioned before, we have our 5th and final meeting of Block 1 for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Public Safety Building. We're going to be working with the CPAC to review the Planning Commission's comments and then survey comments and refining the existing goals and policies. Commissioner Edge, I believe, will still be available to attend in Chair Travis's absence, so we look forward to that. And then that basically will be following that meeting, we're going to be, making any necessary refinements to the goals and policies, and really are going to have to turn that around pretty quickly so we can get working on the staff report and the attachments and the resolution for that July 17th meeting at the City Council, where they'll be pinning down the policies and goals by resolution. And then just looking ahead to Block 2, we're looking at having our first CPAC meeting for that on August 6th. And so we haven't finalized that date. We're going to be finalizing that tomorrow night. But that's going to include housing and climate and energy, climate change and energy, Willamette Greenway, kind of parks and recreation. So there's the housing component, especially, we anticipate to be, a lot of discussion that's going to merit, and require a lot of community engagement. And so we're working on that now. We're working on the background reports for that so that we have a good foundation for that discussion. There's a whole lot of things going on related to the housing affordability strategic plan. We just actually today kicked off our cottage cluster feasibility analysis. So there's a lot of things going on related to housing. And then with climate change and energy, obviously the climate action plan is starting to wind down. They had their town hall a few weeks ago now, but we'll really be looking at incorporating that into the comprehensive plan now. And then the neighborhood hubs outreach, we're looking to go back out to the NDAs to really kind of start to present some kind of design concepts. We got a lot of really good feedback when we went out to the NDAs in May, and so we look forward to bringing back some design concepts for Milwaukee stakeholders to review. We've reached out to different NDAs to try to get out to some of their summer events where they have a whole lot of people, maybe have some booths, just to have some additional information. Not convinced that people that are there for a concert are going to want to spend a whole lot of time discussing, design of neighborhood hubs. But even if it just gets people more involved with the process, we see it as an opportunity to really get the word out to several hundred people in one space. And that's really what we're trying to do, is get as many voices in the process as possible. And so as far as tonight, we do have some questions for you. So basically, are there goals and policies that, based on your previous comments and what you've seen in the survey results, that still need to be added, deleted, or revised? Are there specific items that you would like us to bring up with the CPAC tomorrow night, whether it's refining specific policies or adding additional ones? And just in general, we've been asking, we asked the city council as well, just how are you comfortable with kind of the length and the breadth of the goals and the policies? Are there anywhere it's too long? Are there anywhere there aren't enough? This is basically the last, currently scheduled to be the last opportunity to really get out topic areas so that we can bring them up with the CPAC tomorrow night as we move forward to July 17th. And with that, I'll leave it up to the commission as far as if there are specific items that you'd like to touch on.
Anybody have anything?
I don't have anything. I think it was, everything probably that I had to say, I said in the last meeting. It looks really well put together. Happy to hear that we got at least 5 responses from each of the neighborhoods.
I've got a question about the annexation policies, and maybe I've missed this. Well, I know that I've missed this explanation in different CPAC meetings, but can you just speak a little bit to why that's a goal, or why the city is kind of at a high level pursuing that?
Pursuing what component of annexation as far as being more?
As far as why we're trying to incentivize or, right.
Why is annexation important, and why is it a goal?
Yeah, I mean, at a very high level, just within the general framework of Oregon land use planning, I mean, the plan is for cities ultimately to be the providers, where there are urban services provided and where it's a more urban area, that cities are ultimately deemed to be the proper providers of those services. We definitely have a lot of it, the difficulty in places like Milwaukee, where there are lots of urban unincorporated areas that have long been developed as urban, is that they already have all of those services. And so it is a question, it's historically been a goal and a policy that we would expand within our entire urban growth management area. And so that's a high level question, is that still something that the city plans on doing? And so we've gotten that feedback from a number of different venues, from the Planning Commission, from the City Council. We haven't gotten a strong push to get a whole lot more aggressive in pursuing it. That being said, I think the goal at the city council level is ultimately still to grow within our UGMA area.
I note that the packet doesn't have that map in it that was in the earlier version. So, the map can help kind of explain that a little bit. David, maybe you might, if you
I can try to
pull it up. But since the original plan was adopted and the city's statewide planning goal 14 and planning goal 2 both sort of address this. Goal 14 is the one that deals with urban growth boundaries and urban growth management. Goal 2 is the goal that calls for coordination among jurisdictions. So in the Portland metropolitan area, Metro is in charge of managing urban growth boundary amendments, and we are a community that is completely surrounded. We'll never touch the edge of the urban growth boundary, but we have unincorporated areas to the west and to the south. And when the original plan was put together, all of the land out to 205 was looked at as potentially lands that would be annexed by the city of Milwaukee. So our urban growth management area was drawn to include all that land out to 205. But the agreement that was made with the county to implement that annexation, that urbanization of that area was really quite weak, and it didn't give the city many ways of annexing that land. If you look at this map, up in the Welling neighborhood, you see that odd pattern of the checkerboard pattern of city limit boundaries there. That's the only area in our UGMA where the city was to provide sewer service. And so that area is the one area where people had to annex if their septic system was failing, if they wanted to rebuild, whatever they might do. So that's the only area in the entire UGMA, and this map stretched a little bit. It's kind of a weird graphic in that sense. But that area is the only area where people had to annex. The area to the south, that's sort of almost an island. It's an area that to the west is North Clackamas Park. So that little area right there has some developable land, and it's the area that has the onion field property that is currently developing in the county. And we had negotiated with the developer to have them annex after development in the county. But it's basically they're developing in the county. They'll build houses. Most of the houses that get built will be in the city limits when they're built. So that was something a lot of people in the urban growth management area and south of the city believe they live in the city of Milwaukee. I mean, if you ask them, where do you live? I live in Milwaukee. Well, do you pay Milwaukee taxes? Well, I'm not sure. Do I? You know, and that's the kind of confusion over the boundary. So people get to use a lot of the city services that we might offer. The library is, well, it's partly county funded, it's partly city funded, and some of our parks, basically, many of them are owned by the city. The city does some of the improvements for many of the parks. Many of the events that the city puts on are totally city-sponsored events that kind of help build community. So I mean, there's a thought that, you know, if you are participating in sort of what the Milwaukee culture is, what Milwaukee, that community of Milwaukee, folks we ought to try to annex those folks. So the idea behind this set of policies is to develop really an annexation strategy as such, to figure out ways to get some of these other areas to annex. Basically, years ago, the city, the Wes has sewer service out there, so the city didn't control Wes. The city joined the North Clackamas Parks and Rec District, so gave away control of parks. Most of that area is Clackamas River water, so it's all in a water district, so we don't have control of water. And then finally, the fire district, we closed the fire department and joined the fire district years ago. So all of these different urban services have been, for various reasons, been taken from the city or given to the other districts, partly for cost-saving reasons, but you lose that sense of control, and that was something that the city had to offer to some of these areas to annex. So we need to be creative in how we come up with some other incentives for annexation.
And then just for curiosity's sake, are there any consequences to the city if we were to redraw the UGMA to basically align with the current city limits?
The current city limits, yeah, I think there might be. I mean, I think there are some properties out there that will benefit the city by annexing them. So the larger developable properties. There's conceivably quite a bit of assessed land value out along 82nd and the Clackamas Town Center that would very much benefit the city in terms of tax dollars. The residential areas in between, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of a benefit those areas are to the city. I mean, one of the things that we can offer those areas are programs for better streets, sidewalks, better storm drainage, things like that could help in those areas. And
and local police.
And definitely local police. I mean, our policing is better. Many of those areas are in the enhanced sheriff's district, but they still don't have the police service that we would offer. So those are some of the benefits, but it's how do you craft that sales pitch, and that's going to be something that we'll need to work on kind of after this project's done, after the comp plan's done. We've negotiated or been trying to work with the county to come up with an amended urban growth management agreement that would make some of these larger parcels that are close to the city that are undeveloped, make it so that they would have to annex, and we haven't worked out the final language on that. So that's one of the things we've been trying to do. It's a long process.
So somewhere in this when I was reading over the work, I saw Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge used as examples of annexation. I know I didn't make it up.
I think somebody might have suggested.
I think somebody.
Oh, that was in the comments?
That might have been in the comments. Of
Okay,
people not
right.
realizing that Oak Grove wasn't. Yeah.
Right, and those are not within our purview or what we want to do.
I don't believe so. I mean, I think we're trying to just stay focused on the
north and the east.
On the urban growth management area that had been defined previously.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
I think we would see more opposition looking south. I mean, for some reason, that area was never assigned to a city by the county when these boundaries were initially put together. I'm not sure why.
And so our third largest category of people participating was 10% of people outside of the city of Milwaukee. Do we know their location? Were those Oak Grovians? Or Oak Lodgians? I'm not really even quite sure how to describe them. Or were they people that would be affected by the UGMA?
Good question.
Do we know that?
I don't think that we got in.
I didn't see the detail.
Yeah, I don't think that they asked that as far as breaking it down further.
Did we try to reach out to the UGMA people with this survey?
Not with the survey. I mean, it was available to them if they were, but no more so than we did with anything else. We made it available on our website. I'm not sure how many of those folks look at the website or are on many of the mailing, the listservs and so on that we run. We don't track who's inside the city limits and who isn't.
Is the chunk of land? So there's a part where the UGMA crosses I-205 to the east side of I-205.
That area there, through an agreement with Happy Valley, we have essentially, I don't know if you want to say given it to Happy Valley, but there's an understanding and a intergovernmental agreement between the two cities that area, that we're not laying any claim to that area.
That's where the big cell tower is in a marshy field and...
Oh, I don't think so. That's
like Kaiser and...
Well, yeah, it's Kaiser. Well, you got to assume that that's Sunnyside that comes up, so it's Sunnyside South.
Yeah.
And then there's just a big, there's an industrial park south of that and east of that, but there, when you drive up 205, there's a big marshland, and then there's the hill with the trees, and there's just some cell phone towers in there. I think that's that.
I think that's further south, what you're talking about, Greg. I think. I'm not 100% certain, but I think so.
It doesn't look like there's a building in that picture to me, but that's all right.
And south of there is what I was kind of curious about. Is that Gladstone that's south of there?
No.
Is that
it's
another
Happy Valley.
unclaimed? Oh, it's Happy Valley. It extends into that.
Yeah. Oh, right there below. I know
talking-
that area
No,
right
that's-
there.
yeah.
Again, that's an area that I don't think was assigned to a city.
Okay.
I think Happy Valley is east of 205,
Yeah,
but it would
over
extend south.
That ends up being the industrial area and the,
There actually is a little triangle of land there that isn't in our UGMA, and I don't believe it is in any other city's UGMA.
So what
It's on this
was
side of 205.
what value does that land pose for like employment lands?
I think there is some employment in there today. I mean, it
Is that an area that the city should be targeting for
could
meeting
be.
employment land needs?
That's a really good observation, Joseph, and I think maybe we should consider that.
I thought that area was already within it, but it's just that Kaiser,
Yeah.
you know. and-
David, do you want to try to hit a Google Map photo for a sec? But I think that's a good observation. You know, that's come up before, and we just haven't pursued that because it's just, there's a lot going on, I guess is all I can say. So how to kind of match.
there's your goofy triangle where 224 meets
Yeah.
213.
It's partly that area.
That's Johnson City, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, it's all
further
ODOT
south.
right away, a lot of it. But can you bounce back and forth between the two maps?
Yeah.
So a lot of that's going to be that interchange. And Greg, you might be right about that.
Yeah, and that's 80, is that 82nd, then that's Three Creeks and all that's on
Yeah,
the one side?
The dotted line coming down.
213, 82nd.
Yeah, so it's that big
There's Three Creeks.
blob of area
By
there.
the
that-
Costco.
Oh, there's your triangle site right there above 224. Well,
And you were right
hard
about
to
that vacant area being that wetland and the radio towers.
yeah, so if you were to try to negotiate with anybody
It's just
on
the county.
going south,
Yeah.
where all that industrial land is, I would never see Clackamas County ever giving up that revenue to anybody.
I don't think there's any thought of going anywhere east of 205 because, you know, Happy Valley has extended already down into some of that area. I'm not sure where their city limits are.
And then everything south of that, you would consider Oak Grove on the other 205 side, right?
Right.
Except where Johnson City is.
Well, some of that further to the south is already in the UGMA.
A little bit.
Some of the residential to the east side of Kellogg Creek, which is on the left side of the screen, basically.
Yeah.
Can you flip over the other map? Is the end Thiessen Road?
No, it's further south.
Yeah, it is Thiessen, isn't it? Is that Thiessen right there?
It's hard to... We don't have all the roads on here.
Well, you got the major roads, so that's Oatfield, right?
Yeah, so
right
that would be
right below
Oatfield.
Lake. So that's, Webster would be the one that's going out to 220, or Johnson Road there. So Webster's the squiggle, so it is Thiessen.
I mean, and that entire area is fully developed. So.
And so your triangle is a save and skill
The whole idea
center,
of
or Costco.
programs to annex that it's a very challenging.
There's still some large lots out there. That area is part of the Clackamas CPO, which is formerly called the North Clackamas CPO, but is now just the Clackamas CPO, and they have not been active for some time.
Oh.
Oak Grove more or less aligns with the Oak Lodge Water Services District boundaries,
Oh,
which
okay.
would be further up the hill,
Right.
probably at the crest of the hill.
At the crest of the hill, and then the
Yeah.
other side
The other side is
dives down into
Clackamas.
West or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Clackamas River water.
It drains into West.
It's all
Yes.
Clackamas River Water District. What I would like to do, though, is maybe look at if you extended 205 south, it's going to come really close to the areas that are already in the boundary. And I don't know that it makes any difference if we'd have that interchange in or not, but it might make a slightly cleaner boundary. But from a policing standpoint, does it make a difference? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure why you would or wouldn't put that, clean that up.
Because Johnson City is between Clackamas Road and Thiessen Road on, so.
Johnson City is literally just that one property, though.
Right. And it's further south.
It's just literally that mobile home park.
That is the last mobile home park in the state of Oregon to be annexed as a city. They changed the rules after they did it. Did you know that? Just a little tidbit.
I don't think they're expanding their boundaries.
So does that answer your question, Scott?
Yes. Thank you, Denny.
And the Harmony Road campus is getting annexed into the city, correct?
If your planning staff would ever get off their duff and get working on it, yeah.
So
we have an annexation application.
So let's flip over to the other map.
And the issue with why it hasn't happened is we need to figure out exactly what we want to do with Harmony Road, the portion of Harmony Road. Do we want to take jurisdiction of it or not? And we haven't had that conversation with the council or with the county in detail.
Oh, so you already have it blacked in as?
No, it's not blacked in. The edge there is the 7-Eleven, the tattoo parlor, and the marijuana shop at Linwood and Harmony.
So then does that mean that if you do that, does the city of Milwaukee then want to annex in the Three Creeks Natural River area as well?
That is definitely a possibility, and we could get the county who controls that if they are willing to have us annex it. They could apply for annexation.
Does NCPRD run it, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it does?
But we serve the Clackamas Community College with sewer. And so when they reconstructed their buildings, they had to disconnect and reconnect. So it was the reconnection that triggered their need to submit an application for annexation. And we haven't done the final kind of negotiation and figuring out how to do what we really want to do with Harmony Road. And that's the thing that's held us up.
Well, it would be a shame. I mean, you have of course, the old onion farm, which is getting redeveloped, and we're losing the permit dollars, if you want to say that.
We're losing some permit dollars. We're losing some tax dollars because of the negotiation that we made with them in order to get them to annex. To
annex in after they're done, right?
Yeah, but we are getting most of those homes will be built in the city.
Oh, okay. After it gets developed. After it's developed, it gets annexed in, and then the houses go in. So, I mean, it would be a shame, the Berry Farm, which is that big pasture grass right there in Linwood. I mean, it would be a shame to not get that. I know the brothers are, they're still holding on to the farm and stuff like that, but it'd be a shame that we couldn't have a conversation with them and ask them just to annex in.
Yeah. We haven't had that conversation.
Before they sell. And those are the kind of things that I see that this annexation working is, so I live up there on the northern section of Linwood, and it is so good. I mean, there's 4 houses there that aren't in the city. And they're nice, big, deep lots. I mean, they could be split out. You probably get maybe even 3 houses on each one of those lots. And I mean, it's just a shame.
But if I could point out one thing about the Onion Farm property and why they didn't want to annex, is that our subdivision requirements do not allow flag lots. And they have developed a subdivision that includes some flag lots. It's a long, skinny property. It's awkward to try to figure out how to develop it. And the other thing about it was our zoning in that area discounts the, unless you were doing a planned development, it does not allow you to include your right-of-way. The county's development process allows you to count the right-of-way in your density calculation. So let's say, for example, I don't know if I can do this off my head, but let's say you've got a 70,000 square foot parcel and it's an R7 zone, and they would then, somebody could do 10 7,000 square foot lots. You divide 7,000 into 70,000, you get 10. So you get 10 lots. You build a road in there, you would probably get 5,500 square foot lots and a road, but you get 10 lots. The county would allow you to do it that way. We would say 70,000 square foot parcel and 20, if 20,000 of that is roadway, you got 50,000 square feet that you get to develop. Divide that 50,000 by 7,000, and you're going to get 7 lots. So the county gave them more development potential than that we could have given them under the city. So, and it just seems a little bit backwards if you think about it. Most of the time, the cities are the place where people would come to have more urbanization. So one of the things after we get through this process we need to look at is how do we sort of balance that and make it at least equal for development in the city versus development in the county. I would think it shouldn't be more attractive to someone to develop in the county.
Right, and that was the exact example that we used at the last meeting where we discussed this to really kind of hammer on that subject. And I guess the question is should we request a policy around making it, I mean, specifically around that? I mean, kind of, more, I mean, high-level language, obviously, but, something to the effect of
equalize that, yeah.
Making, I mean, it's what we talked about was incentivizing, was creating an incentive to develop in the city, more of an incentive to develop in the city than in the county. But how would you turn that into a comp plan policy to actually charge the city with looking at its development regulations and subdivision regulations to meet that policy?
You know what you could always basically say is that once you annex in, you get 3 years to use the land use policy that is least restrictive.
Maybe. I'd rather come up with our own.
But you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
Instead of trying to rewrite everything to match the county or make the county try to change their mind, you could kind of do it that way, but you put a time limit on it.
Let us ponder that idea, but I think that the basic idea is that we are at least matching what the county densities would be, and there's multiple ways of trying to get at it.
Right, matching the county, or at least the least restrictive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't need to be very prescriptive about it, but certainly just to have a policy that it should be more. It should be incentivized. There should be more of an incentive, more of a reason for developing within the city than outside.
Okay.
And so why we got this map up? This is back to kind of goal 1 or the one and this policy 14. Is that I think most what you would call out-of-towners that come to enjoy the farmers market and the library and that kind of stuff, they're mainly Oak Grovians. because it's easy to get here. I mean, I think that we should really kind of look at policies on how do we communicate with our friends, let's call them friends, to the east of, or from the west of 205 to our city. And how do we get them to feel like that they can be a part of the city, to give them that sense that they belong, so that when they're asked, hey, do you want to join, you know, they at least have a sense of the community. And it's because I live in Linwood, and Adam can attest to this, you know, we don't go to the Fred Meyer on Webster, the Safeway on Webster, or we don't go to the Fred Meyer on Oak Grove. We go to 82nd.
That's true. Sure.
You know, and so, I mean, everything kind of, I guess south is kind of the right way to say, from 224, they all travel the Oakfield McLaughlin line, and everybody north of that kind of goes towards 82nd. I don't know where Ardenwald goes, but
like Island Station would shop to the
yeah. And so, you know, there's a sense of community, especially with the East Siders, what we like to call ourselves the East Siders, that, you know, we have a connection, we have more of a connection to them, but they don't have a connection to us because they don't go downtown. It's too far away. And there's not a good path to travel to it. But it's easy for us to get to 82nd. It's just kind of one of those barrier things, you know, and that's kind of dangling the carrot. I mean,
224 is a major barrier for folks.
Well, it's just, you know, and so is McLaughlin. It's just a mental state of mind. It's just, and really, I mean, to go to Fred Meyer, to go to the Oak Grove Fred Meyer, it may take 5 more minutes, maybe. Yeah. But the Johnson Creek one is just 2 turns. You know, I mean,
right.
You know, it's just one of those things.
Well, I mean, certainly in the absence of, you know, renegotiating the UGMA, you know, boundaries, you know, significantly from where they are, then, you know, I think it does make sense to, whether it's, I mean, it's kind of like a mishmash of goal 1 and goal 4, I mean, of, you know, the 1 series of goals and the 14 series of goals. But to you really reach out to the people that live in those communities and, you know, help them feel like they're part of Milwaukee, so that, you know, there is an interest there is a connection there, and I fully believe that 82nd corridor offers a lot of development potential, even under its existing zoning in the county. There's a ton of development potential over there. It's zoned to be the densest, most urban part of the county. It could, I mean, maybe Milwaukee's at a point where, you know, you need to kind of make a decision about, should that be its own city that develops on its own and manages itself, or is that part of future Milwaukee? And, you know, and I asked the question earlier about if there's any consequences to redefining the UGMA to be smaller. And I basically mean that in terms of how the state would interpret that and if there's any legal repercussions. I know we don't have counsel here, but, you know, when you're talking about residential land supply and employment land supply, you know, what would the state think when they review the comp plan?
That would be a really interesting question if we were to propose that to Metro, to DLCD, and to the county, that, nah, we don't want to go there.
Well, in the county,
honestly, I think Happy Valley would gladly say, we'll go there.
I believe that's true, too. But, you know, it's just like 224 is a barrier or a boundary, so is 205. And it just seems very clean and logical to fill that space out. And again, all of the revenue potential, you know, from those commercial properties. I mean, that's, I really think that it's, you know, a wealth of services could be provided to the community by annexing those areas and allowing them to maybe even redevelop at greater potentials than the county zoning allows. But, you know, that's certainly part of a future planning effort if that was ever going to happen. But
You got light rail at the town center. You got at the Clackamas Town Center. So.
And the Monroe Street Greenway is, you know, is going to connect over there. And there's obviously the Springwater, you know, is at the northern, you know, end. And, you know, and I think Railroad is going to get a multi-use path. And so, I mean, there's a lot of connections that will be made over there. And I think that that's, you know, an underserved area that deserves, you know, attention and outreach. And I don't know if it needs a specific policy, but, you know, that.
Yeah, make them feel welcome. And the other one thing that we certainly have learned in the last 6 years, that the county has made so many better connections from 82nd to at least Fuller Road.
Well, they've had an urban renewal district.
Yeah.
It's paid for and is paying for.
Yeah, I mean, the road improvements that they have made there is fantastic from my perspective. I mean, you can get in and out of there now.
King Lindy.
Yeah.
Stretch we're on. And of course, they're about to shutter the Toys R Us at 82nd.
I bet you that turns into a Amazon or a FedEx warehouse. Seems like
not
a
a bad
perfect
call.
spot for it.
It's a decent prediction.
Bad for retail, really good for warehouse.
I had a field trip with planning directors from around the region here 2 weeks ago, of the new the new Amazon warehouse going in Troutdale.
Yeah.
Is unbelievably large.
How bad?
And it's under construction right now, but it's like they're talking about having 1 million shipments a day. That's unbelievably large.
Yeah, it's huge.
So, and it's right across the street from the FedEx facility. So those intersections out there are going to get blown out, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any more comments about urban growth and, I guess, communications? We kind of hit those two.
No, that was really interesting.
So I have one, though, on the arts, history, and culture. So, and I believe I have a commissioner sitting next to me that will agree with me on this statement, is that I don't want this to be the written law of goal number 5 when we get to goal number 5, because I think that I think that there are policies that we can look at for historic preservation and kind of maybe talking to Clackamas Heritage or Clackamas County Heritage Council and talking to Restore Oregon and talking about their ideas like historic overlays. I know it's kind of touched in here, but I don't want it to be forgotten when we get in. I just don't want this heritage section to get shoved into goal number 5 and just say, oh, we're not going to talk about it.
There isn't another goal 5 that we're going to bring up, except for natural resources. The natural resources component of goal 5 will come forward, but the way we've structured this is we've carved natural resources off. We've carved historic preservation off.
Okay, so then that's okay. I would like some sort of language. I think that we really need to look at a historic overlay. And what a historic overlay basically does is that if there is a city, county, state, or national registered building, that when the property develops or redevelops or change uses, that the historic overlay allows that building to do whatever the new zoning is allowed. So if it's, if it's zoned for residential and you have a house, let's take the property on 34th, for example. So if you have a house and it's zoned residential, right, it's sitting there residential, there could be a historic overlay that sits over the top of that house that says it can be manufacturing, can be industrial, can be commercial, or it can be residential. So that way, no matter what happens around it, that building can be saved. The big example is the Bull Run power plant. And that was in timberland. So you're allowed to have a power plant there, a hydroelectric plant, right? Mm-hmm. And so what they did is they just threw a historic overlay on it to save it. And they said, look, it can be repurposed any which way. It can be residential. It can be, in the middle of this timberland zone. And now it's a flourishing art gallery with a studio, and it saved the building because it could be flexible in its purpose.
Define flourishing, please, Greg. I've put my kayak in there before, and there was nothing flourishing about the...
well, they're artists, man. They come and go late at night. Probably not early in the morning.
That you probably... Okay, that answers...
Unless if you're out kayaking for bats.
That's a perfect answer.
Yeah, there you go.
So what I was going to say is what the county zoning allows is when there's a historic overlay on a property, that there's a list of explicitly stated uses that are allowed as a conditional use regardless of what the zoning district is, and that that seems to make sense. As a conditional use, with a conditional use review, you can make sure that it fits, the proposed use fits in with, the surrounding area, but you still have this ability, this economically viable, potential use to preserve what's there.
Well, we could definitely add a policy that talks about developing sort of some mechanism to allow a wider range of uses for these historic properties if they are protected, so that seems like a really great approach.
Yeah, something like that.
But I wouldn't be, at this point, I wouldn't be very specific about exactly how we do it, because there's a lot of ways you can get at it. But I think the concept is a very good one that we ought to.
Policy 1.6 kind of gets at it. It says encourage the restoration and maintenance of historic resources for both continuing uses and the adaptive reuse of properties.
It might just be a word change or something.
Right, but I don't think that necessarily makes it strong enough.
Yeah. But it's partly about what you're getting at is the flexibility in land use that you would gain through this designation.
Right. And, to incentivize, just basically, look, from the environmental aspect, that's the other thing that really bugs me, is that you take a perfectly good building and you just tear it down because, one, it's in your way, and two, because you can't make it work. So, and a lot of these are sitting in the middle. Now, if it has no value, it has no value. Like the Kyle house had no value, and the Hager Pond house had no value. You could just push on it, and they'd probably fall over anyways. But there are houses in historic Milwaukee, and I get that, this is kind of like everybody should have solar, but we should have a 70% tree canopy cover, right? It's if we want density, it's very hard to preserve things. They're kind of, they fight against each other. And so I'm not anti-density, and I get, and I'm pro-development for the most part. But it would be nice to at least save some of these unique style of architecture. You don't have to save them all, but, be able to save some of them.
One of the other ideas that I'd been thinking about with respect to this is transfer of development rights. so that, you have a property that has a historic asset on it. We want to encourage the protection of that asset. So someone's able to take what they could do on that site and add it to, what they can do on a nearby site, so that they can get the sum total and the aggregate. You have access to all the same development rights. It would just be nearby instead of on that specific site, because there's what I think of in the residential areas is, well, typically things get redeveloped and subdivided. And so, obviously, if you have a subdivision, you could do, if there's enough room, you could have a planned development, get a little extra density by protecting, the historic asset on the site and kind of building around it or moving it to the corner and building, away from it. So the planned development's one way you could do that. But if you don't have enough room on the site to preserve the structure or build around the structure or whatever, then, or even just move it to the corner and do anything else with it, if you could transfer those development rights to an adjacent site or within reason a nearby site or a downtown site or whatever makes sense from a policy, high-level policy standpoint. But just that general idea of being able to transfer your development rights somewhere else, so that as a tool to allow access to all of the same property rights, but an investment potential, but also protect the asset.
Well, the simple version of that is something that is allowed in many natural resource areas, where you can concentrate the development on a portion of the site and maybe do attached dwellings where you wouldn't normally be able to do them, or something on that order. Exactly. So trying to take that idea and apply it to historic sites, and transferring that to adjoining properties is probably pretty easily doable and writable. I mean, the difficulty with transferable development rights is the notion that you are taking the development capacity from one location and transferring it to some receiving area that can take that capacity. So it can become a really complicated task to try to figure out how that happens and how you meet all the facility requirements for the area that's being transferred. And it's why you don't see it very often. It's really hard to do. But when you're talking about one property and transferring around on that site, it's not so hard to do. So it might be possible to do it to the adjoining properties. You're close by, the types of impacts are similar. You start to look at it as one development. You take both sites together and look at them together. So that's an idea, and a good implementation idea, I think.
But yeah, so it's certainly more prescriptive, and I think we need to get in the policies, but certainly just policy language that facilitates and encourages that kind of an approach, so that at least there's opportunities to have those discussions with applicants, or or between applicants and the city. In the future, before something gets too far along to really affect its trajectory.
Yeah, another idea, along those, you could do preservation credits like they do environmental credits. You could say, well, if you're saving this particular house, we'll give you credit, we'll shorten up your lot sizes that sit around it, or we'll give you basically a transferable credit to another property, or, something like that. The old cap and trade policy.
Well, another thing that happens is, people donate preservation easements off the property, and that there's some financial value in that is then given to generally to a nonprofit like Restore Oregon or somebody else. Yeah. So that happens.
And my other stress in this is that I really want to make sure that that we actually take the time and do update our resource list. It's been since 1984 or 1985 or something like that, and I realize that the 50-year thing, so probably everything downtown now or in historic neighborhood probably falls within the 50 years, but I imagine you could probably do it by just doing, Zillow and Google Maps.
Well, I mean, ideally, we would maybe work with the State Historic Preservation Office to, they used to fund inventories. I don't know if they still do, but we've budgeted some money to update our inventories. I mean, in the budget document, or in the not, it might not be in the budget document. In my notes for the budget document, it was natural resource inventories and historic inventory. So we've got some money set aside to take care of that. But the idea was, let's sort out the policy part first, and then take the expanded inventory on. Didn't want to mix the two. It can get inventory expansion that might add regulation gets really complicated.
Right.
So.
And I also want to say that, the Milwaukee Historical Society is certainly willing to be partners in helping the city in any way possible to be able to, I mean, if you just need a group of volunteers to walk around and snap pictures and knock on doors or whatever, so.
Well, I think we need to make it a, something that people can be proud of, to participate in this and instill some pride in ownership of historic homes and recognition. So how you do that takes a little money, mostly takes some manpower or volunteer efforts to kind of celebrate these places, and that's the commitment, basically. So.
And I only have one more thing, and so it's under Goal 2, Policy 2.1. And I kind of harped on this before because it seems like this policy has now gone back to just visual art again. And so Policy 2.1, I think, would be better read if you say, provide opportunities and programs for art and culture to be located throughout Milwaukee. And the reason why I say that is that there are other forms of art than just statues.
Cultural events.
There you go.
Cool. That's a good suggestion.
So I'll say, Denny and I were in a meeting, and I said to Denny, I said, well, I can't wait to get to Goal 5. He's like, well, we're already working on the historic preservation of Goal 5. I said, I feel a little duped. So
wasn't intended.
That's why, I know. That's why I wanted to.
So we're not doing all of Goal 5 in this block. So the open space is another.
Right.
Okay.
The next block has Parks and Rec stuff, so we'll try to talk about open space there. And then the last block has natural resource protection. So we're actually splitting Goal 5 across 3 blocks, if you want to really think about it.
So I had some questions, since open space isn't part of, we're not, just not looking at it. The economic land supply and the relationship between that and the state's requirements for a 20-year supply of employment lands. I'm really just curious about the relationship and just making sure that our policies are appropriate to support what the state expects of us in those terms, and just that we're thinking about that, because we're basically looking at it in terms of, what we're hearing is, we want more home-based businesses. It's just going to be redevelopment. There's not, outside of the metro area, there's not really any cities that are completely surrounded by urbanized area wholly within an urban growth boundary within the city, or within the state. And so, what is kind of the state's perspective, I guess? Has this been an issue before where you've had discussions with the state about employment land supply, and there's nowhere for you to, I mean, I won't say nowhere.
It's mostly, for the metro region, it's mostly dealt with by metro for new land, that might be added. And much of that land is out in the Hillsborough area, the
right.
vacant land or larger parcels. And there is some in Clackamas County. And Clackamas County, David was just in a meeting this week with county officials about a land study that they're doing, and you might be able to add to that. But I think for the most part, for us, it's all about redevelopment. It's all about trying to figure out ways to add jobs in the areas that are already developed. And in the downtown and North Milwaukee, we've got a lot of potential. In the Milwaukee business industrial area and out on Johnson Creek, there's definitely potential out on Johnson Creek. There's the Milwaukee business industrial zone, the BI zone. That's pretty saturated with folks, but there's still people redeveloping, and they're still adding jobs and doing things in there. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Goal 9, statewide planning Goal 9, it calls for you to do an economic opportunities analysis, and then for your comprehensive plan goals and policies to basically reflect those findings. And that's essentially what we are. I mean, we've done an economic opportunities analysis. We don't have any vacant land, and so our goals and policies are obviously focused primarily on redevelopment and utilizing that.
Metro forecasts assign a small amount of employment to us, and it's partly based on vacant land, and I'm not sure what else goes into that calculation, some trends. But the other thing about our situation is we have more jobs than we have people that work. So we import workers.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I mean, we've got that balance. And the rules, the state rules, are sort of written in isolation where, for a community like McMinnville, they're written there, so you're trying to provide the jobs for that sort of isolated community for the amount of people you've got there. They still have a zillion people that commute to Salem and other places.
They go to Hillsborough. They go everywhere.
Yeah.
They commute from everywhere.
But I mean, conceptually, it's a great concept to have this balance. But it's the reality of the economy is that people go all over the place, especially with two-income households. Somebody goes all over the place.
That's in my family. That somebody is me. So, and then I mean, just as far as DLCD's involvement, our prime consultant actually just left her consulting firm to go be the Goal 9 specialist for DLCD. So we are hopeful that her kind of review and help in developing these policies kind of gives that stamp of approval. But I think, just as far as my analysis of Goal 9 and kind of the way that we've worked these through, I think that it is, that it is compliant.
Did you miss your window to go over and
Yes.
on the street?
Well, I want to ask questions about the survey.
Okay.
And so, were you disappointed that you only got 100 to 120 participants?
I mean, I think we always want more. I mean, obviously, but I mean, I think we understand that this is a topic that, is attractive to certain people. We had a fair number of people that, click through, probably just as many that click through and then didn't fill out very much at all, so we didn't include any of those in our survey responses. And so I don't think we really have a baseline to evaluate. We did the outreach, through as many venues, through, our email list, through the website, through, the town hall, So I don't know how many I was expecting. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell on a topic area like this, how many you're going to get, just because we, especially at the policy level, we're asking people to go through, several dozen policies, and
they're kind of hard to.
It's kind of hard to do. So, yeah, I mean, ideally we would have had more responsives, but I don't know what success really is.
So, were you surprised that 80% of them said that they've got it by email? And does that worry you that your results may be skewed?
I mean, we have an email list of like 500 people, and there is definitely a lot of overlap between the people that follow the city on social media, that are also within, we ask NCPRD and other places to share it as well. I think, I'd have to look at, I don't know what the statistical significance, what sample size we need within our email list to make it representative of, the city overall. But, we, just from the people that show up at city events, I'm not overly concerned that, a large part of our surveys, respondents were from that email list, just because we built that up over the course of like the last 2 years through a bunch of different venues and events. And so I think that it generally is, relatively representative. I think certain groups and, demographically speaking, it is, probably not entirely representative of the city. And we've tried to, do other outreach methods that help to improve those. And they haven't, we're continuing to build on that, and we want to continue to improve. So.
Well, the survey is just one source.
No, I understand. And this kind of falls into this communicate, it just. So you had 100 people, right? You had 25 or 23 of them, from the Ardenwald neighborhood, which could be a meeting for, the Ardenwald NDA. I was surprised at some of the NDA comments that some people, I'm surprised that people that took the time that took the survey probably weren't part of their NDA. So I was surprised by some of the comments, and then just one person that just wastes the taxpayers' money on every line. But
is there a way that we could do better?
Well, so you have 7,000 followers on Facebook or something like that, right? And you only got 10% of the answers that said, "Oh, I saw it on Facebook," and so it just it amazes me that either it's a boring topic, right? I mean, I'm for some unknown reason, I've turned into this land use geek, and I don't know why it came that way, but it just has. But, or are the questions too difficult for the common person who don't quite get it, or understand? I would probably say 90% of the city doesn't even know what a comp plan is. So, I mean, are you reaching a specific audience anyways, or people are just not taking the time to click on Facebook? Was it only shown once on Facebook instead of a repeating pattern, once every 3 days, one of those things? I mean, everybody's feed gets buried pretty quick, so.
Yeah, one thing about the survey too is we initially had thought we would put it out earlier without kind of the level of detail that it was at. We thought we were going to ask some of the same questions that we asked at the open house. And we sort of missed a window right there when we were going to do it. And so we ended up having this document that was moving towards goals and policies. So we used that instead of more of the conceptual stuff that and the more open-ended questions that we asked at the open house. And I think our hope is in the next round that we will do it earlier and get a sort of more open-ended open-ended isn't the right word, but more conceptual kind of response.
I get the point. You can't just ask an open-ended question and try to sort through all the results. I mean, you have to give a multiple choice kind of answer. But yeah, I mean, you know, this is kind of digging into the weeds, and
It could be a little less technical,
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to try to do next time.
Really?
And we,
and my suggestion, at the farmer's market, have a sheet where they can just fill in check marks or whatever, you know.
I was looking at Mary thinking, are you going to the farmer's market? We should probably find a time.
But I mean, you could run it, if you run the thing for a month, or you run your survey for a month, you know, you can at least, the city can be out there twice to collect these, you know.
Yeah.
You just hand them a thing, hey, do you want to take a survey real quick?
Well, I just think we probably need a presence at the farmer's market just to, like, go, hey, go to the website, see what's going on with the comp plan, which would mean make the website a little bit more accessible. But yeah.
And First Friday, too. If it coincides with the First Friday, just have somebody go down to the food carts and walk around maybe for like 30 minutes or an hour.
Yeah, I don't know the specific numbers, but I believe it was relatively close. And we did, for the visioning, we had relatively similar numbers in survey responses, which is definitely a much more visionary, easy to kind of understand and follow type questionnaire. And we did do some outreach at the farmers market, but again, it's kind of a hard concept to get people to get behind sometimes, unless they feel like it really affects them.
Well, one thing we are going to do is try to get out of the neighborhoods on some of the hub work that's going on. So
And on the hub thing, so there is somebody whose grandmother owns a property right on Monroe. And he and I were talking at the Wichita groundbreaking, and he's like, you know, this house, you know, my grandmother's, he still lives in town, and he's like, oh, you know, my mother is thinking about moving, and he's like, it's a perfect spot for a neighborhood hub. And I said, well, you should tell them that. He goes, well, why would I want it to be zoned that way? He's like, I don't want to have to run a business out of it. I said, no, that's not the way that it works. Really, the way that it works is that if you have it zoned residential and commercial, you have just doubled your amount of people that when that house is no longer useful to your mother or to you, to be able to sell that property to and make it change over. And he goes, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so you kind of got to, right? You kind of got to sell it commonsensely. Is that the right word? Commonsensely to people so that because that's immediately what they thought, well, if it turns commercial, then I have to have a business in there. Right? They don't understand the lapse of time. And and we are in the process now of where houses are turning over because the next generation doesn't want to live in that house anymore, or mom and dad need to be in an assisted living. And so, you know, it's a prime opportunity to grasp some of these 40 to 50-year-olds who, you know, can be able to think about that concept. I think if you're 70, you probably have a harder time, you know, being able to think about the sale of the house in the future. But
it's a common problem for planners in general.
yeah, you know, and that's why I was asking about the survey too. It is clunky. You know what I mean? It's hard questions, but, you know, is that why you only got so many people that went through it all the way? You know, is it fatigued because it's taxing, or is it because you got halfway through it and you're like, you know what, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore because it's just
fuzzy to them, most people.
Yeah.
Policy stuff.
I also think it was too long.
If we start at a conceptual level, bigger ideas, I think it'll be easier, and I think we can still get the same kind of direction.
Yeah, so I mean, I think just having it this way in the first blog is definitely, you know, we'll learn from it and, you know, revise it and have it be more focused around kind of that town hall level input that people provided, as opposed to expecting them to go through, you know, a set of 75 or 80 policies. And, you know, engagement, we are, we'll be working with the city manager's office, with Jason and the neighborhood outreach, just in general on our engagement strategies. I mean, it is something that the city overall, it is a very much a high priority, and we'll continue to work with them. And there are definitely places where we can improve. And, luckily we have, a good amount of more time, to make those improvements. So as far as within the future blocks of work.
And so one of my suggestions is that, tell Jordan, hey, you know what, run this every 3 days on Facebook. Because, I mean, I go on Facebook when there's something important that I need to post for the museum page, and I never, I look at it every now and then, and, most of the time I flip 2 or 3 pages and then I'm pretty much done with it. And I'm too old for Twitter or Instagram, so.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Was it just Facebook or was it all social media?
It was on Twitter. I don't know if he did it to Instagram. I would have to ask them. Their following is not as big on either Instagram or Twitter, but it definitely, I mean, it's a different, I mean, it's rapidly changing, but.
Yeah, I look at Instagram way more than I look at Facebook.
Yeah, I'm old. Yeah, it just, lucky I even downloaded the app for Facebook.
It's all there.
And I think the other thing to consider too is that they're also advertising for a lot of things on the Facebook page, and so we found it difficult to kind of ask for
there's a schedule.
Yeah. So sometimes that's a little more difficult, but we can always keep trying. Yeah.
And when you do that, put it, because all the NDAs basically have a Facebook page too. The museum is always happy to share things. I mean, you can almost make it an event. Set it up like as an event. I don't know how Instagram works. Is it just
no events? It's just
put a picture of.
Yeah, it's basically just a picture.
And go to a link.
The Instagram
and
is
then
much more just a link. I mean, it doesn't have news articles or events. It's basically focused on the picture and what the picture links to. So.
Well, it'd be hard to, I think, link to a survey on
You could put the link in the profile, though, and they can click on it.
So we're doing surveys for every block, the period of time when we're exploring the 4 blocks, right? So,
Well, 3 blocks and then a synthesis block.
thank you, yes.
Blocks.
Yeah, so and then as Denny mentioned, in the next 2, we plan on shifting up the survey to get it to be more at that high level that's probably more conducive to an online survey so that people don't get overwhelmed by how specific it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed in the historic part of the comments, but then I look at it and I'm like, well, it's 34 people.
Yeah.
And, if you have, if they're younger people, they probably, and just moved in, they probably don't know the history of Milwaukee, and they don't value. I had a friend that lived in Beaverton. I said, hey, why don't you come out to Milwaukee and we'll go out to a bar? He's like, well, I don't want to have to listen to country western music all night long. And I said, well, why? And I said, well, bars don't have that out here. And he says, well, yeah, well, you're like Malala, right? I mean, everybody says cowgirl. I mean, that's the kind of the perception, and so when people move in and, they don't quite know that it was the city in Oregon when Oregon was established. So, but if 500 people say that they hate historic preservation, then why do we have it? You know what I mean? I mean, seriously. I mean, but is 34 people going to...
No, and we can do some research as far as other cities that have done kind of similar work. I mean, I can tell you when I was in Beaverton and we were getting the hard sell from a company that had like an online engagement tool, and they were giving examples, and they gave the example of Phoenix, not Oregon, but Arizona, and they said, we got like 250 comments. I'm like, but you have like 3 million people.
And a 3 million MSA.
Yeah, and so... when you look at it, when you scale it down to Milwaukee, we're actually doing pretty well. If we have, 10% of the comments with, 1.5% of the population. Yeah, I think it's, as I said, we want to make it as easy for people to participate and to get as many people participating, and we'll continue to refine, how we do our outreach. So we definitely appreciate the comments.
What about, how's the, I guess, outreach to maybe like businesses? I mean, you could do maybe like little half-page or quarter-page postcards and just give them to the businesses and let them kind of have it up at the register, just so when people come in, they can be like, oh, what's this? It might be something.
Especially on a first Friday.
Just because, some people still not big fans of social media, and, something that they could take with them and be like, okay, I can give this 15 minutes. And we might get a couple more responses that way.
Yeah, and actually with that, make it easy with you on First Fridays and just have like 4 tablets. And instead of having handwritten, have tablets and say, here, you want to take this, and have them do it, and then that way then you don't have to hand plug it back in.
Yeah, just set up shop at like a picnic table down at the food carts on the First Friday.
We'll make sure to have the Find My iPad enabled on those things, just in case.
Well,
have one of those like wire cables.
If you buy 7 of them, then you can give them to the Planning Commission afterwards, and then we don't have to use all this paper.
Kill 2 birds.
So I don't know when the last First Friday is, but that would give us incentive to get that done before the last First Friday.
Well, the next one's July 6th.
Oh, but our survey is September.
October.
I think they run through October.
But yeah, the October 1st one generally gets pretty. I know the rainy season doesn't start until October 31st, but Halloween night. It gets a little cool and a little dark.
Yeah, might give us a target though, but that's about when we were going to be doing the survey or the open house.
Well, yeah, because the intention of the survey originally was to be an option for people that couldn't make the town hall or open house, and they could still be able to comment and provide feedback.
Yeah.
And that just kind of didn't happen this block. We kind of didn't have enough time to do that.
I don't want to pick on it. I was just.
No, it's a good.
Great.
Those are really.
Good comments.
No,
It's
that's
fundamentally
what we need.
important.
I mean, you
think about how we
you live
canvass
here,
people.
you follow the social media. I mean, you participate. So these are the things that we need to hear.
Yeah, it's helpful to provide an avenue for everybody to be able to respond if they want to, not just people who are, have their phones in their hands all the time or on computers all the time.
Well, that and the 80% email, I mean, I'm on multiple email lists, so, I got it. And then I had an NDA leader email me one and say, hey, FYI, and I didn't even get it from my NDA leader. It was a different NDA leader. But, it's just how do those things spread? Our NDA does a monthly newsletter, and we have 200 or 300 people on an email list. I can't remember if he had the link to take the survey or not, or if Jason got it out to the NDA leaders, or you know what I mean. It surprised me that many people said email.
No, that doesn't surprise me. I would have. I think that would be the way we'd get it.
I would. Every Joe Schmo is.
Yeah.
Take this survey. Are you smarter than the monkey in the picture? And then you take the survey, and those things are all over Facebook.
So
but
we need the marketing ploy to.
Well, I'm just saying.
Either that or the person writing those emails is just so brilliant at writing emails.
Well, yeah, and good looking, and yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Good.
I don't think so.
No, good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other business and updates? Am I doing that right?
We've got another meeting with DLC next week, next Monday. And is it next Monday? Yeah, next Monday. And getting another packet from our consultant team probably on Friday to go out. So there's going to be a lot of time for folks to review it before the meeting. But what I've asked Brett to do at this point is to try to break it into maybe 3 chunks so we can try to work through that, and then we'll start to engage with the Planning Commission. We're just trying to get this in a form that everybody kind of agrees with the concepts, and then we can start having a broader discussion about it. Okay. The intent isn't to really revamp all of the downtown standards. It's to match up standards with guidelines and intent statements so that the process makes more sense. But we might change some standards, in the process, but we'll just, hopefully, it's not intended to radically change the downtown, the approach that we've got. Mm-hmm. But I know you guys had a long discussion last time about process. I wanted to get the basic standards down in place before we moved into process. I did listen to your discussion. Okay. And so we will get there.
Okay. Do you have anything that you want to add to that? Aren't you part of that group?
I am, and I will be at the meeting next week, and I missed the meeting in June because I was at the Historic Resources Forum with you, or where you were. So I missed the meeting and don't have anything to report from the June meeting. Were you at the June? Are you going to be there next week? Okay.
We'll all get a chance, so it's not as if you're going to miss your opportunity to get involved in this.
Okay. Planning Commission committee updates and discussion items. I think we covered the one that everybody else is sitting on, and I'll be there at the comp plan one tomorrow night as well. And
good.
Sitting in my normal chair, not making any comments.
Listening to her.
Forecast for future meetings.
Yeah, we've got housekeeping. The next phase of housekeeping, we're calling it room service, but it's a little meatier than the first round. And I reviewed most of the staff report for that today. So that's in 2 weeks. It shouldn't be a super long meeting. It's just that there's more than the simple housekeeping.
We don't have any stuff coming up?
There's stuff in the wings, but there's a couple of applications that are incomplete, and there'll be some things coming, but it's not quite as hectic as it had been. You'll take a breather.
Little summer break.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
How novel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
So moved by Commissioner Argo and seconded by Commissioner Edge. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And hearing none, let's get out of here.